Hello and welcome to Warren Thornton on Patreon, warrenthornton.com. Hello everyone and welcome to warrenthornton.com. If the light is a bit bright, I do apologise. We're trying to dim it a little bit, but it's refusing to play ball. So I do apologise if the light is a little bright for you this evening. We have got tons for you this evening, and we've got a fantastic story to begin with. We are going to be talking about air raid sirens in Israel. The idiot presenter, who is nothing of, certainly not. We would call her a presenter. If the BBC can call RT people a presenter, we certainly can. Cathy Newman, who's fresh off a drubbing from Jordan Peterson, decided to try and take on the Iranians. Once again, made herself look a completely stupid idiot. We'll be talking about Elbit Systems factories being burnt down by people who want them out of the way. We'll be talking about the Iranian Majad missile, the one that took down the F-35. We'll be talking about von der Leyen, Africans in Israel not being allowed to go into the shelters. We'll be talking about Aquatiri. We'll be talking about the BBC. Naeem Bakali will be showing you Kim Jong-un's daughter's ride in a tank. We'll be talking about Erica Kirk, the French giveaway general who's been murdered. Interceptor drones being tried from Ukraine, trying to trade them for Qatari jets. A K-52 Russian helicopter taken out by the Ukrainians. We'll be talking about Lockheed Martin and what's happening with them. The Philippines, China radar lot, which has got everybody completely flipped. Qatar flights into Luton, the VIP jets going into there. We'll be talking about Sky News having a look at the economy of finally coming round to our way of thinking. We'll be talking about the tanker that has been boarded by French yet again. We'll be talking about the Tripoli in the Boxer, Trump's unhinged rant about everybody else being cowards. We'll be talking about the Ukrainian police monsters and everything that they've been up to. And we'll also be having a look at what's happening in Tel Aviv. And of course, there are patriots going up in smoke in Bahrain. So there's plenty to keep you entertained, plenty to keep you interested. We are actually going to start tonight with what we think is a fabulous story and something we have a little bit of an inside edge into. Have a look at this. We are. So this is the story of Dimitri. We're going to call him Victor for tonight because that's how he crossed the border. We're literally going to take you on a walkthrough of his journey to safety. Now, this is a Ukrainian man. That wasn't his picture there. We can't show photographs of him. There's certain things we can't show because obviously there are the powers that be would very much like to know how it's done. If anybody's a fan of this channel and you are a subscriber to this channel, you know what I used to do as a job previously, you will know how certain parts of this journey were done and how they took place and how he was found a place of safety and able to cross the border right in front of Ukrainian aid. This was a guy who was ripped from his home by the TCC. As I say, we're going to call him Victor. Now, Victor was beaten, thrown into a van. I'm not going to tell you how many children he has, but he's married and has children. We don't want to narrow the playing field for anybody if we can possibly help it. He has children, and of course, he's married, and he has family still back in Ukraine. So we do have to be a little careful. But he was literally thrown onto the front line after 1 week of training. While he was in the TCC, after he was kidnapped, he received not broken, but certainly very, very bruised legs, where they smacked him across the leg and told him that he was going to fight. Within a week, in fact, 9 days, I'll be absolutely accurate, he was given literally a sidearm, not a rifle, no grenades, nothing, a sidearm, literally a revolver, and thrown into a defensive area. So where was that defensive area? Well, let's get right into the story, right from the word go, and then you can see everything that went on and exactly how bad it was. Now, he was made, literally forced to do this. He did not want to be part of this at all. So let's have a little look here. So he was taken to a place called Berestov, which is just here, which, of course, if we zoom out a little bit more, you will see is near Konstantinivka, which is in the Donbass. Let's zoom out a little more. Do excuse my wheel. It doesn't work brilliantly. We need to get that fixed. But it's not far. Konstantinivka, it's on the edge of Konstantinivka, which is near Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk, which is in the Donbass. Now, Berestov is right on the front line, and the Russians have since taken it. The very first place he was made to actually go and defend, we can get the wheel working properly, is this area here. And very simply, he was taken to these forward houses, these forward farmhouses here, along the T054. He was left there for 3 weeks. They were given, there were 7 of them. They were given no food, no water, except for the ration packs that they had, which lasted roughly 3 days. They were dug in. Then the Russians turned up. They were told to go to a meeting point. They were given 3 meeting points when they radioed in, and they had to leave that area because they were being overwhelmed and bombarded for 2.5 days solid. They had no water, no food, and very little ammunition. So they retreated along this road here, this T0504. And they retreated to a place called Oko here, which they were told would be their next rendezvous point. And of course, they then radioed, and they were told to make their way further into the heart of Konstantinivka. And the whole idea was that they would then be set up and rescued from there. The idea was to make their way to this area over here, and the whole idea was to then get them out. We can just get that wheel working properly. There we go. So the whole idea was to make their way to the railway. And the whole idea here was to rendezvous at the local history museum of Konstantinivka. And of course, they would be given further orders and everything else. This was meant to be the point. Well, when they got there, they radioed and they were told to just sit tight. Well, they sat tight for 7 hours. Nobody came to see them. It was at this point that a drone was aimed at them for leaving their positions, killing 4 of them and injuring 2 more. Now, our chap, Victor, as we're going to call him, managed to get the help of some railway workers. He was the only one who wasn't injured, of course, and it was a Ukrainian drone that did this, and they thought they had killed everybody. Now, very simply, he decided he was going to make a run for it, and of course, he then hugged the railway line all the way in to a place called Bruzhivka. He then managed to find friends of his in Bruzhivka, which is here. He managed to find 1 or 2 friends, and of course, he made his way out. Now, he couldn't go into Kramatorsk because these areas here are cut off literally by Russian drones and everything else. So going along these highways here, or trying to make their way into Kramatorsk, and at the time, as far as he's concerned, he's got desertion on his mind. He's leaving. They tried to kill him. He's then made his way to a place called Operative, which is here. And of course, he's then, shall we say, on the run. He's been given help left, right, centre. And of course, he's trying to get the hell out of Dodge, as they say. Nobody actually wanting to stay and fight. Now, bit by bit, he has made his way over the course of 15 days to Poltava. And on the outskirts of Poltava, he has managed to make contact with people that we know. And if you know what we used to do, then of course you will know exactly who I'm talking about. And then what took place was an epic journey over 27 days. Bit by bit, they moved him from Poltava to a place called Cherniv. And just outside of Cherniv, he was picked up by other people. And of course, bit by bit, it took another 3 days to get all the paperwork and everything sorted out. But eventually, he was able to achieve a place of safety. And the place of safety he managed to get to is this place called Loyev, which is just over on the Belarusian border. So an epic journey of 57 days where he was left to die, left, right, and centre by the people who had beaten him up, put him in his home, in the home. He is now safe. So we have to say, because, and everybody should rejoice in this, shouldn't they, including the people who are, shall we say, Ukrainian or even Israelis or even the EU von der Leyen. You'll be celebrating that this guy has managed to get to safety. And the real reason being, and if you're Jewish or even a Zionist, remember that it says in the Talmud, he who saves one life saves the world entire. So 57 days of from being left to die by the Ukrainian authorities, this guy, Victor, as we're going to call him, is now safe. And here's a little video just to show you what Victor actually went. There we are. So that was literally a quick 15 minute journey through there. Grateful thanks to absolutely everybody who helped him get to Poltava in the first place. And the people who do watch this channel from time to time, can I just say a massive, massive thank you for all the work that you do in rescuing people. He is one of the lucky ones in rescuing people, in making them safe to get across the border and into safety. As I say, this was a man who was ripped from his home, literally beaten, thrown onto the front line, and should have died along with the other 7 people that were left to die by the Ukrainian commanders, and of course were told to go to another area. Then they were sent to an area where there were no people, no witnesses by the railway line, and then a drone was fired at them by the Ukrainians for deserting their post. The other 2, we've no idea what's happened to them. We're hoping that when this is all over, he will come on the show and be able to talk to us. Once again, the people who risk their lives, and you know who you are, to get just even one person free, it's a victory. Lee Williams.
I was just going to say, what is his age, Warren?
He's 47.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. as far as I'm aware. Let's say he's in his field. But as far as I'm aware, he's 47 years. So that gives you a big heads up. The craziness, the fact that this is one good story in amongst the millions, and I do mean millions, of bad luck stories, being bad luck enough to be born into a war or in a war that none of them want to fight, but the EU and America and many others around the globe do. Quite staggering, quite horrible, and these people should be ashamed of themselves. And here's one of them to start.
My final point is on Ukraine. Let me turn to the 90 billion euro support loan for Ukraine. A decision was taken by the European Council in December, and there was one condition, the condition that 3 countries would not participate in the loan. That condition has been fulfilled. So let us be clear about where we stand. The loan remains blocked because one leader is not honouring his word. But let me reiterate what I already said in Kiev. We will deliver one way or the other. So yes, we have challenging tasks ahead of us, but today we have strengthened our resolve. It was a very good European Council. Thank you very much.
So that's Ursula von der Leyen there. She's talking about Viktor Orban, who is blocking the 90 million that basically they want to give, shall we say, to everybody else, but not, of course, shall we say, to the sensible people. Half of that money will go straight away. To paying off the loan, and will go back to the banks. So it is quite ridiculous what they are coming out with. It is unbelievable. And of course, Viktor Orban has been being under all sorts of attack, shall we say, from various people around the globe. And this is beyond the pale, really, when it comes to Orban. He has been steadfast in saying they need to find a way to have, shall we say, decent dialogue with Russia to finish it. And of course, they're also trying to interfere in their elections, which is not going to go well. Nicholas.
Well, it's the same with Trump. He's borrowing 50 billion a week, they say, but he's paying for the central banks 90 billion a month in interest. So I think this is the money that Israel is going to use to rebuild itself after its defeat by Iran, probably. But America doesn't have that money, doesn't have that resource to rebuild itself.
No, it is a bizarre thing, isn't it, when they turn around and go, oh, do you have, we want more money for the war, But half of that money is getting literally siphoned off. It's incredible. And you've got literally Zelensky at the moment, he's begging, trying to swap over jets, literally trying to swap jets for drones. Quite incredible. Zelensky has been banging the drum saying, we can give a hand, we can help, this, that, and the other. By the way, can we have some of your jets? Which seems to me a very, very odd thing to do. Ukraine have had some good news for them, I suppose. They have taken down a K-52 Russian helicopter outside of Pokrovsk. Let's have a look. So as you can see there, there's just the footage there of the K-52 helicopter, Russian helicopter that's been taken down. And of course, they'll be claiming that as a huge victory for many, many moons to come, no doubt. And of course, it is for them, it's a massive, should we say, it's a massive thing. Not in the course of the war, it's an absolute, it's a drop in the bucket. Nicholas.
Yeah, I presume if you shoot down a helicopter, there's no survivors because nobody's got an injector or a parachute.
No, exactly that. There's not going to be much left of that, to be honest, and you're going to be dead as the old saying goes, dead as Kelsey's nuts. I'm afraid you're not going to survive that, I'm afraid. And it is quite staggering. There's something else that's quite staggering that we're going to get into in a minute, and it is really, really bad, I think. Ukraine has passed into law. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, that they wouldn't do this, especially given everything that's surrounding Epstein at the moment. But they have. Vladimir Zelensky has passed a law that allows the Ukrainian, should we say, the white helmets, not the white hats, the white helmets that go into various towns and cities and take away the children for their own safety. He's passed into law a bill which allows them to take the children without the parents' consent. They can just go in, grab the children, take them away. Seems very odd, doesn't it? Especially when you consider how many of those children are already missing. And there are tons that are out there that are in actual fact. Quite weird. And I would think, Sean Murphy.
Well, they're obviously running out of dosh, Warren, aren't they? So they need to steal as many children as they can to sell to the West.
Certainly looks that way, doesn't it? Without any shadow of a doubt, I've got to say. When we're talking about children who've been trafficked, we are talking about 9,000 alone in the Donbass that have gone missing. Nobody seems to know where they are. Nicholas.
Yeah, they're also trying to pass a law to lower the age of consent and the age of marriage as well. How that's getting on.
Yeah, quite sickening. And this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. It is staggering, absolutely staggering that we are supporting these people in any way, shape, or form. For me, might not be for you, but certainly for me. Sean Murphy.
Well, they're just treating these kids as commodities, aren't they, Warren?
They are.
They're just treated as a commodity.
Yeah, and we have no idea exactly what they're going to do with it. I think we know what we're going to do with them, but Lee Williams.
I was just talking to a lady before, around about 45 minutes ago, basically about her daughter at school, how they're being trained, because in case there's some, let's call, asylum seekers coming into the schools. So it's something that's on the event that's happening around schools now as well in the UK.
Okay. Nicholas.
Well, we talked about this before, but Zelensky's just putting into law what's normal among NATO. Yeah, wherever NATO has been, be it Yugoslavia, Syria, Iraq, there's always been child trafficking and done by white helmets. The white helmets have been working in Syria, and as we know, the white helmets was established by the British and founded by an SAS soldier called Le Mesurier, who, when he was exposed, committed suicide.
Yes, he did. Well, allegedly. Allegedly. We're not 100%. Let's have a look at this then. While we're still on the subject of Ukraine, these two here. What we were just when we played the video there about Victor going to safety. These two are now well out of the country. They're no longer in Ukraine. Bless them. Don't they look a lovely couple? Well, they're not. This guy, Max Pushini, and his girlfriend were in the Ukrainian police, who were actually forcing people onto the front line. Now, as far as we're aware, they are responsible for at least 55 deaths. They have now left the country with their wads of cash they've got, obviously, from throwing people onto the front line, their bonuses, and they are now living on benefits in Poland, I believe. There we are. So that tells you everything you need to know about those sort of people, doesn't it? Nicholas.
Yeah, it's not only they were not only getting money for throwing people on the front line, but they were also getting money for not throwing people. You could pay a very large bribe and you wouldn't be thrown on the front line. That's probably where they got most of their money from, I would have thought.
I think you're absolutely right. It's a good shout. And while we're on the subject of Russia, there is one other thing. It's not really. It's a bit storm in a teacup, and I don't know how other people feel, but it's very storm in a teacup for me. Is of course the boarding of another tanker. The French have done it again. God bless them. They've gone and boarded a tanker called Denia. It's a Mozambique tanker that was on its way to Russia. Now, this is the typical French. They boarded a Mozambique tanker because it's on its way to Russia. They wouldn't dare board a Russian tanker, which seems absolutely strange, doesn't it? They're quite happy to board one if they know they're not going to get pelters from Russia. I'm sorry, Macron, you are an absolute coward. You keep doing this. You keep doing. Well, how can I put this? Irritating thing. If you're going to board somebody, if you really are against Russian vessels, go board a Russian one. You won't do that, will you? And of course, he's talking about being able to access and talk to the Russians. They're not going to talk to you.
Well, as we know, the Africans want to throw the French out of Africa. And probably this is Macron flexing his muscle, saying, if you want us out of Africa, you're not going to be allowed any oil. And we were told a few weeks ago that Russian tankers were going to be protected by Russian Navy. Is that happening? Because we haven't heard about much.
Say that again.
We heard a few weeks ago, about a month ago, that the Russian Navy was going to protect Russian tankers.
Yeah, it's in the pipeline, I believe. They're certainly talking about it. Dmitry Peskov held a meeting about it 2 days ago, but so far they haven't released the upshot. But they're sort of making warning noises without actually doing anything. I think you're right, Nicholas. We have to get to a point where, unless the Russians actually go and do something about it, me personally, if you're going to do this, now it's hard to keep tankers safe across the world, but the Russians could just turn around and go, okay, we'll keep the Straits of Hormuz closed, and that way we'll make money on our oil that we're losing by them intercepting our tankers. They haven't thought of that. Louis Bastos.
The French will get the karma when the Russians take Odessa. It will flatten all those French.
Yeah, because we know that there's a lot of French soldiers. We've been warning about this for months. There were tons of French soldiers, and everybody is now catching up and telling us that the French are in Romania. Wow, as if we didn't know that. And of course, everybody who watches the show knows full well that we've been reporting on this for absolutely ages. As we've been reporting on this quite a lot, and it's nice to see others doing so now.
There's a significant amount of heavy US bombers stationed here at RAF Fairford. There's several B-52s. Around a quarter to half of the US fleet of B-1s are also stationed here. At one point we actually saw one of the B-1s taking off, presumably heading over to bomb Iran. We've also seen a number of 2,000-pound bombs just stationed, kind of dotted around the airway here. And earlier this week, some US soldiers were pictured on this airfield transporting those bombs around. And so what we found today when we arrived was that a lot of the fence around the airfield had been tarpauling off, basically fenced off, so that journalists and members of the public can actually see into the base to see what's going on here. And that doesn't scream, a defensive operation to me. The US forces, which control this base, are hiding, concealing what they're doing behind the fence.
There we go. So that is Fairford, and of course we've been keeping a track on this all the way through. And here's the B1s. Here we go. it's not the only airport where they're doing this. A-10 Warthogs took off from Prestwick not so long back, a few days ago, about a week ago. And they've been literally landing in Germany, and they've been landing, of course, in Akrotiri Air Base, where they've been picking up depleted uranium shells, which were moved there after they were literally bombed out of Ukraine. It was very, very telling. When the government turned around and said what they were doing about, literally not allowing anybody to use their bases. We're in this war. France are in this war as well, well in it. The French are crawling around all over the place in the Middle East and in the ocean out there. But here's the thing. We actually had people come on and say depleted uranium doesn't do anything. It's perfectly safe. Absolute nonsense. You just go and have a look. The amount of Iraqi children that have blastoma cancers. And of course, they were trying to deflect and then turn around and said there was no depleted uranium shells in Ukraine. They must have missed the meeting where Rishi Sunak actually sent them. And of course, they were found by the Russians, blown up. Then they stopped using them. The Americans transported theirs to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. And Britain got theirs out of the country, out of Ukraine, and sent them to Cyprus. And of course, one has to ask, did they already know what was going to happen? I wonder. But just in case any idiots out there think that that is perfectly okay, or that, of course, this doesn't happen and there's nothing like this, it's complete nonsense. Depleted uranium shells are not safe in any way, shape, or form. And you can find lots of American scientists who will turn around and agree with you. But guess who they're paid by? It really is something that people have to look at and say, this is not good. And it isn't. When we are starting to use depleted uranium shells on anyone, if they were not, how can I put this? If they were safe, they wouldn't be using them now, would you? Why would you want a safe weapon? Quite incredible. Let's have a little look at this. This is Sky News, and they're talking about the economy and the oil because of what's happening. Not that Sky News are any good or that this is a fantastically good report, but what it does, it gives you an idea, a real idea of how much now mainstream media are beginning to wake up, beginning to panic, because they know the war is not going to end anytime soon, and a major conflict needs to happen in the Straits of Hormuz for them to be able to force it open. Let's have a look.
We've had more extraordinary events in the Persian Gulf recently. I want to just kind of go through why some of these recent attacks matter, why they might be different, and what might the implications be for the global economy, a little bit about the UK as well. We'll start with kind of the big picture. And what we've got here, obviously, this you'll be familiar with this map already, but we've highlighted where the oil and gas fields are. So, I mean, what you see, looking at it, look at how much of a preponderance there is of hydrocarbons within this area. There's nowhere else on the planet that has quite such a big supply of this stuff, and we still need this for the global economy, as we'll come to in a second. And zoom in particular on this. You'll kind of notice that big blob. What is that blob? That's a massive gas field. And it's known as the North Field, or at least the Qatari part is known as the North Field. And that's because you can see this is in the middle of the Persian Gulf. And it is, as you can see, it's massive. And just due to the way that kind of maritime borders are, round about, well, more than half of it, kind of 2/3 of it, falls into Qatari waters. And then you've got this kind of part, this third, that's Iranian. And the Iranians call that South Pars. The Qataris call that the North Field. But the key thing to note is it is just one big gas field. And Iran has kind of got their straw poking in one end, and Qatar have got their straw poking in the other end. And they refine and kind of process the gas coming out. So the Iranians process some of the gas coming out there. They've got pipes going under the sea. And then the same thing for the Qataris there. And this is what's critical. You've had that Israeli attack on Iran there, and then the retaliatory attacks on Ras Laffan. And we've talked briefly about Ras Laffan before. I want to just focus on it, actually. Let's just zoom in. So we'll zoom in and show you this complex. It is an extraordinary place. We visited there a few years ago, and there is nowhere else on the planet that has quite such a concentration of energy. Nowhere else. And if you look at just at the area, so I mean, obviously to the outside observer, you come into these places and it just looks like this kind of maze of different pipes. But I want to just zoom in so you can see what really matters, I guess the kind of the beating heart of this. And that is, here you see what are known as liquefaction trains. I'll zoom in again so you can see. So we'll zoom in on that. Now, each of these, it's crazy. These things are basically turning the methane, the gas that comes out of the ground, gradually through a process of incredible refrigeration into liquefied natural gas. So you're taking that gas and turning it into a liquid, but in order to do that, you have to get it down to incredibly low temperatures. And that takes so much work, and these things are so expensive. Billions of dollars just to build one of these things. There are 14 in total in Ras Laffan, and the latest news is those attacks have taken out at least 2 of them. That is big news, and the Qataris say you're talking about potentially 5 years to get these places up and running again, and that is massive for the global economy. Basically, after the gas is produced here, so it gets pumped into tankers like this, where you've got it in these kind of round spheres, and then it gets shipped around the world. And there are many places that depend on it. Europe enormously, but also Asia, and it's a global market for liquefied natural gas. But part of the reason that Ras Laffan matters so much is the concentration of just how much power there is there. And what this chart is showing you, it's a fascinating chart, it's showing you the biggest various different types of energy plants. So the biggest nuclear plant there, the biggest hydroelectric plant there, and how Ras Laffan compares. And if you look at this, basically, in terms of single sites, there is nowhere else on the planet as important as Ras Laffan, apart maybe from this one, which is the biggest oil terminal on the planet. So Ras Laffan there, and that one's known as Ras Tanura. Nowhere else comes close. And what do those places both have in common? Well, back to the map. There's Ras Laffan. There's Ras Tanura. They're both right there in the middle of the Persian Gulf, and they are both not operational right now. And as you just saw, the attacks on Ras Laffan could reverberate for years. And that on top of the fact that just simply getting stuff in and out of the Straits of Hormuz is impossible at the moment, or nigh on impossible. All of which contributes to the fact that, and this is a chart we've been updating all the time, gas prices are going, if not crazy, then certainly they're going higher. This is showing you the gas price in the UK, just to give you a sense of why this is a global issue, up by 99% in the last few weeks. So doubling in the last few weeks. But worth just saying, if we zoom out, and I'll zoom out and go back all the way, same data, but going back all the way to 2022, we're not in that world yet, thankfully. So it's the highest since 2023, but it's not as high as it got back then. But it's already having a bearing on at least the UK economy and economies all around the world, because when you start to see gas prices going up, you start to assume that other prices are going to go up, particularly bills, particularly power, but also other things as well. So this is showing you UK inflation forecasts. There was that big spike up to double digits back around 2022. Economists thought it was going to get back to kind of normal, so close to the Bank of England's target there before the war. Now look at how their forecasts have changed. On the presumption that you have higher energy prices for a while, 4% inflation this year as it starts to feed into bills. So that is a real impact already. And of course, when inflation goes higher, then the Bank of England typically needs to respond. So look at the Bank of England. This is Bank of England interest rates. They went up very high, kind of up above 5%. They were coming down to 3.75%. And pretty much all the economists, all the investors, all the traders thought they were going to carry on going down. And so you'd have another 2 cuts in interest rates this year. But now look how those forecasts, that was the end of February, forecasts have changed. 2 cuts, that was what people thought. Now they think 2 hikes, 2 increases in interest rates this year. It's extraordinary to have that enormous a shift so quickly. And as with this, you also get kind of impacts on other markets. So this is just showing you government borrowing rates. And the reason this matters is because governments around the world in particular the UK, and we'll come to why the UK matters in particular in a second, are facing a big, sharp increase in their borrowing costs, which means, you know, the taxpayer will end up having to pay more as a result of that. UK government borrowing costs, this is the 2-year government bond rate. They've just gone up at the fastest rate since the mini-budget, the famous Liz Truss mini-budget of 2022. So just to give you a sense of the kind of where we're talking in relation to history here. So really sharp there, massive change in the scenario. Why does it matter for the UK? Why does it matter for Europe? You know, that these fields that are miles away, thousands of miles away, are being affected. It matters because Europe in particular, and the UK specifically, are very dependent on liquefied natural gas. That stuff that goes into the tankers at Ras Laffan. Right now, about 14% of the gas in the UK comes in the form of liquefied natural gas. But there's more coming from Norway and more coming from the UK. But roll on a few years, roll on to 2035, and two things you'll notice. First of all, there's less gas we're consuming. That's part of, you know, the net zero plan. However, look at the proportions here. Much less from the UK, so the North Sea is dwindling. A bit less from Norway, but much more proportionately from liquefied natural gas. 46% of the UK's gas is due to be imported in the form of liquefied natural gas from places like Qatar. And if you don't have that gas coming, whether it's from Qatar or elsewhere, then you've got a bit of a problem. So that's a concern for the UK. The final thing to note, okay, this is not just about energy. I mean, energy is so important. It's the foundation stone for global economic activity. But if you think about what was happening here, so this Israeli attack, one of the things that Israel said, the reason they were going for this refinery that takes the gas from South Bars is they said it's a dual-use area. So what do they mean by dual-use? It's military as well as civilian. And does that really stack up? Well, actually, if you think about it, that is quite logical here. Because when you think about places like this, plants like this, they're not just getting gas that goes into the rest of the grid. They're also doing something else. Pretty much all of them. In those big complexes, they take methane, gas, and one of the things that is often done with it is, it's called the Haber-Bosch process. And basically it means taking methane and turning it into ammonia. And what's important about ammonia, it is used for explosives. So most of the world's explosives do also come from gas. But by the same token, ammonia used for explosives is also, its other key use is as a fertilizer. So these plants, which are incredibly important for the world economy, producing energy, producing explosives, but also producing the fertilizer that keeps the world fed, they are currently under attack. And, you know, it's not just explosives, it's not just fertilizer, it's also other things as well. Qatar produces a third of the world's helium. And helium, because basically it's another byproduct of that coming from natural gas. And helium matters partly because, as we've talked about before, it goes into MRI scanners, so it's really important for that. But also it's used within the manufacturing process for semiconductors. So you've got all those semiconductor foundries around the world making chips for AI, for phones, for everything else. They need helium, and all of a sudden, a big chunk of the world's helium just isn't there anymore. So you can see why, in so many different dimensions, what's happening in Iran has consequences that reverberate way beyond economics and reverberate around the world to all of us.
There we are. So that was a very, very, should we say, risque report, but at least they're paying attention. You will have noticed, of course, when he showed that spike in 2022 in gas and oil prices, that happened because, of course, of the war between Russia, and we decided, of course, that we were the gas and liquid natural gas and everything else, energy bills were going to go up. It was down to the Russians. No, it wasn't. It was down to the fact that we didn't want to pay that anymore. Now, they were showing that huge spike there, but did your energy bills go down? This is the hockey stick we're talking about. Takes ages for that to come back down. Didn't even normalise then. And of course, they're just lying to you, because if suddenly that spike went right down again, just imagine this, if you would, that spike in 2022, and then they said, no, look, it's completely dropped in 2023, 2024. You were still paying massive bills. Okay, your bills didn't drop by that much suddenly. And very, very simply, this is a false bunch of nonsense that they feed you. saying, well, everything was perfectly okay and it all went back. Yeah, it might have been for them, certainly not for you. Sean Murphy.
Well, Warren, we've only got the biggest protester, the monarch of the Middle East, to thank for that, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. And it is absolutely staggering. It is staggering how they are trying to blindside you with this, because the bills went up because of our reluctance. And of course, when they show you that they've gone down again, how did they go down? If we're paying the USA and Germany are paying 4 times what they were paying Russia, they're paying 4 times. How did your bill suddenly go down? They weren't buying. Just explain that to me. Britain were paying 2.5 times the amount to America for liquid natural gas and oil than they were, and of course your bills went through the roof. Suddenly they said, no, it dropped right down again. So how do you square that? You're still paying those prices. We're paying 2.5 times as much, but the cost has gone down. Really? Someone's lying to you somewhere. Somebody square that circle. If somebody's got, if somebody's got an answer to that, a sensible answer, I'm more than willing to hear it, because for me, those two things don't add up. 2022, right through the roof, because we're no longer getting gas or oil from Russia. Then it drops down again, but your energy bills don't, and you're paying 2.5 times the amount. So what they're doing there is they're saying that's what they're paying, not what they're passing on to you. So it is a complete nonsense. It's a total scam, and we shouldn't be having a bloody bar of it. And of course, there are many people out there who are saying the same thing. And of course, it's only going to get worse because they hit Bandar Langa. Let's have a little look at this. So this is the US and Israel hitting just down the road from Bandar Abbas, which is on the Gulf of, which is on the Straits of Hormuz. They hit Bandar Langa. Now, hitting that is absolutely stupid, because once again, they've gone after an area that controls traffic going through. Now, it's not like it stops traffic going through. It's complete nonsense. And of course, all this energy net zero and everything that we've got coming up is complete rubbish as well. If you think we're going to get to net zero and people are actually going to get to net zero, you've got another thing coming. Net zero is a pipe dream, if you'll pardon the pun. It's an absolute joke. And of course, as this war goes on and more of it goes on, getting oil and everything else through the Straits of Hormuz, if there wasn't a problem here, nobody would be saying a damn thing. People would just be going about it. You have to remember that Donald Trump has had an epic rant. Let's have a look. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Now that fight is militarily won, with very little danger for them. They complain about the high oil prices they're forced to pay, but don't want to help open the Straits of Hormuz, a simple military maneuver that is the single reason for the high oil prices. So easy for them to do with so little risk. Cowards. And we will remember what is this absolute lunatic rant that we've just had there. Nillis.
Yeah. Will this energy crisis just affect Europe and countries like the Japan and the Philippines, or will it affect China as well?
It'll affect China a little, but of course they'll be able to get everything they need from Russia. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yep.
And
they'll be fine.
I was watching a program on the Duran I think it was last week, and they were talking with an American who lives in China, and he was saying that China is 84% energy sufficient.
Yeah.
They produce 4% of their energy, and the rest they can get from China, probably get from Russia.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly
and that. That means that Europe's going to be behind in manufacturing and everything else, including data banks and things like that.
Yeah, but they wouldn't put the future of the British people at risk, would they? John Murphy.
Well, Warren, I just like it the way Trump is berating Europe, saying that they should be putting their ships through there. He doesn't say along with us.
It's,
He wants everybody else to risk their naval vessels or their vessels to go through the Straits of Hormuz, but he doesn't mention with it's so easy for them to do with so little risk. Cowards.
yeah,
He
great.
doesn't mention his uh, vessels, does he? Going through, he wants
No.
everybody else to do it so that they're the ones at risk. So there's no risk to them.
Yes, I must admit, I took great exception at what he said there. Lee Williams.
I was going to say that obviously it was started by the USA and the UK with the killing of the children, and from that's what's happened to this degree at the moment. Also, there's a new thing coming out which is called meningitis, apparently, which is a load of bull. But I just thought I'd pop that in as well.
Yeah, we'll deal with that a little bit later. Let's stay on topic here. Just to give you an absolute heads up here. When he's saying, "Oh, they're not going to be doing this," well, your bombers are loading up in the UK, so they are helping because you want to get the Straits of Hormuz open. Well, if we don't load your bombers for you, you're not going to have any great shakes, are you? And the French are mucking about and helping out, giving targeting and everything else. They've got plenty of, shall we say, plenty of boats on the water that are feeding lots and lots. And of course, we know this because one of their guys was using his Fitbit watch or whatever on Strava, left his watch on. So we know full well that the French Navy are out there giving a helping hand. So this is all a blind side. There's no real, shall we say, the British, the French, the Germans, the whole of NATO is helping out already. Okay, they're just not committing troops to this crazy venture. They don't want to do this because then all of a sudden, then the dying starts. Now, without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. NATO's a paper tiger anyway. So it won't take on Russia head on, won't take on China head on. They're all saying that USA should leave NATO. Absolutely, everybody should leave NATO. If the USA leaves NATO and pulls all their bombers out of the UK and everywhere else, I'll be the happiest man in the world, and I suspect many others would be as well. What we are is literally a 51st state of America that is there, or 52nd state of America, depending on what you see as American states. We're just we're a floating island that is basically a bomber base for America. And as far as I'm concerned, get your bombers, get your airfields, bugger off. They didn't want to stop the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Iran has always been nuclear-powered. Where's the problem with that? I'll let you in a minute. Where's the problem with the nuclear-powered Iran? It's not a nuclear weapon Iran. That's the one you're missing. Now the fight is militarily won, in capital letters. No, it isn't. You haven't won at all. In fact, there are more drones and more rockets flying than at the beginning of the war. Full stop. Fact. With very little danger for them. Of course, there's extreme danger. You're talking utter nonsense. They complain about the high oil prices. The high oil prices that you charged them, that you started in the war with Russia, then you started charging that idiot von der Leyen, who just literally turned around and said, yeah, okay, we'll pay it. And they did. They are forced to pay by you and your policies and what you've done, but don't want to help open the Straits of Hormuz. What, by going in there and getting killed? How does that turn it into a battleground? A simple military maneuver that is a single reason for the high oil prices. It is not a simple military maneuver, because if it was, you would have already done it. NATO would have done it, because they wouldn't be crapping in their pants. Let's be honest here. So easy for them to do. No, it isn't. With so little risk. No, it isn't. Cowards. And we will remember. Well, cowards, being cowardly, why would you want somebody to go and fight for Israel? It's not their fight. And as for cowards, I remember you being late for the last two world wars, and you're making up for it by being really punctual this time. And as for cowardice, it is not cowardly There is a big difference between cowardly and being brave and being foolish. And you have proven yourself to be a fool. I had high hopes for you, Trump. I'm afraid you've lost me, 100% lost me entirely. You are so owned, it is unreal. And as far as I'm concerned, as for cowards, I fought for my country. I didn't fight for Israel. Okay. And of course, very, very simply, if they're such cowards, how comes you're not flying in there and showing everybody how it's done? On you go, Donald. Nillis.
Yeah, well, you can tell that Starmer's owned as well because they're using the American bases of Fairfield, but they're not using the. Are they using the Romanian and that really massive big NATO base with the airfield on that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Which the French are sitting in because they want to make a dash for Odessa. Should it all go? Should the Russians suddenly make a dash for Odessa? Then they're going to try and beat them there. That's still to come.
But if they flew from Romania, that would cut about 3 hours flight off their journey.
Yeah, I mean this is the whole point. They want control of the Black Sea. Turkey will be next. I mean, don't think this is going to stop. It's absolutely. Sean Murphy.
Well, Warren, you said you fought for your country. I fought for my country. I never saw Starmer or Donald Trump when I was at war. I didn't see them with boots on the ground anywhere near the front line.
No, well, in fact, Donald Trump dodged the draft 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. So it just shows who the cowards are.
Yeah. I don't remember him ever putting on a uniform and fighting for his country. Simple as that. Absolutely, absolutely incredible when you hear that nonsense. It staggers me, and it does annoy as well. Now, I know we have American people on this, that come in here like MPIM and Eric Jones. They must literally look at this and think, what on earth is this guy talking about? Because there are sensible Americans out there. Most Americans don't want this war. Most Americans don't want this war. Most of Europe don't want this war. They don't want the war with Russia. They don't want the war with Iran. It is time for absolutely everybody to unite behind one single message. No more war. Never mind the climate and everything, because what they do is they give you lots of things to worry about. Jabs, here's meningitis, here's climate change, here's Russia, here's, inflation, here's immigration. Let's start with one simple thing, everybody getting together on one simple thing rather than be fractured into different factions. One simple thing. No more wars. End of story. Louis Bastos.
The only guy that was really in war was Churchill himself, because Churchill was in jail in South Africa in the South African Boer War. Churchill was in jail. He was one of the very few who have actually seen combat.
Yeah. And there were, and of course, in the Boer War, he fought. He was actually a correspondent for the Times in the Boer War. Sean Murphy.
Then he was in jail. He was jailed.
Yes. Sean Murphy and then Robert. Sean,
I've already spoken, Warren.
Okay. Robert.
Churchill never saw action.
He was a war correspondent.
He was hated by the army before on demand. In India, he was always at the club or playing polo. He actually lost the troops, the cavalry in Omdurman in the Sudan. He was a danger, and the army hated him all the way through his life. He destroyed everything. He stopped O'Connor from advancing on Tripoli.
He was in the Queen's Own Hussars.
Indeed, but he never saw action with them.
Yeah, 1895, he was a war correspondent, but he was attached to the Hussars and then went to into the Boer War. Let's hear from Louis Bastos and then Nillis.
Yes, all I know is that I learned that, studied that in my history in South Africa, that he in the Boer War. I mean, the details, I don't know whether he was fighting, but thank you for updating me on journalism.
That's all right, buddy. That's all right, because he was a journalist. Literally, we'll have a little thing on his writing career. So he was commissioned a cornet, which is a second lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars, if memory serves me rightly, which was not a lot of pay at the time. And he gained his colonel's agreement due to his observance and writing in the Cuban War of Independence. So he was he travelled to South Africa as a correspondent with the Morning Post I think it was just at the turn of the century, I think 1900 or 1899, something like that. But he of course needed extra funds. So literally decided he would subsequently be posted back to his regiment and then, of course, supplemented it by making himself a war correspondent. So Robert's right and you're right.
Thank you for the updates. Thank you.
That's all right. You're both right. Nilus.
Well, David Irving was allowed to access the Churchill papers, and he found out that not only did Churchill get a stipend from the British Board of Deputies, which was paid for by the Shell Corporation, of £20,000 in real money at the time, and after this payment he would get every year, this is when he went against Hitler, and but also every time there was a bombing raid on London, because the Enigma ciphers had been deciphered, he knew when there was going to be a bombing raid on London, and he got a car out of London every time that there was a raid on London. And so he was a bit Netanyahu in that respect.
Yeah.
And also he was a sot. He was a drunk. He didn't get up until 11 o'clock. He was an alcoholic, quite often literally drunk. And even his speeches were read by actors. One of the actor that did it was actually one of the actors on Larry the Lamb. And both David Irving found this to be in the Churchill papers, but he also found it to be in the BBC archives. So Churchill didn't read his speeches that we have.
Just goes to show you, doesn't it, Andy? You might want to jump back out and jump back in again because we can't get your chat box on. The thing that we have, and I'm just going to, there was somebody just sent me a message saying that they absolutely, he did take part. He took part. He participated in the Battle of Omdurman in the Sudan in 1898, and of course that wasn't anything special. With sort of one of those where you sort of go, okay, these were guys armed with pointed sticks and riding camels and stuff. So I wouldn't call that a real war. So Robert's sort of pretty much right there. But of course, Churchill had a lot of detractors as well. One of them was very much the British public. As soon as the war was over, they kicked him out of office. Lee Williams.
Good question. Was he anything to do with Zionist at all in the way of Churchill?
He certainly backed them without any doubt. He was one of the strong allies and supporters of an Israel state. No question about that. Nilus.
Yeah, his mother was Jewish, an American Jewish. It was quite normal for the British aristocracy to marry rich Jewish heiresses from America, and that's how they kept their estates afloat, especially because of the high taxes after the First World War.
Yes. So, I mean, it's not just, don't get me wrong, it's not just America. America have got an unhinged leader at the moment. We've had one or two in this country as well, so don't you worry about that, all you Americans out there. We've got plenty of our own. It's not like you're all alone. It just happens to be your turn on the wheel of fortune, as they say. Getting back to everything that they're talking about and everything that's been going on. And of course, many people are turning around and going, but the Saudis, we've got to help the Saudis and everything else. Something about the Saudis you need to remember. Have a listen to this. Now, this is a guy who was in the CIA, by the way.
I believe that Al-Qaeda did 9/11, but I believe elements of the Saudi government were involved. I know for 100% fact that elements of both the Saudi government and the Saudi royal family were involved. Those 3 royal family members are no longer alive. I might as well just explain it. Look, when we caught Abu Zubaydah on the night of March 28th, 2002, we also confiscated his diary. I was leafing through the diary while I was sitting at the foot of his bed. He had the cell phone numbers of 3 Saudi princes. And I reported this back to headquarters, and headquarters just lit up on the Saudi royal family and said, look, either you get a hold of your family or we're going to do it. And we're going to start killing people. And some of them are going to be named Al Saud. So we said, we want to talk to these 3 princes. Well, next thing you know, one dies on the operating table during bariatric surgery. The second one was killed in a 1-car crash on the Riyadh to Jeddah highway. And the third went camping in the desert and died of thirst. And then we couldn't interview them. So yes, I believe the Saudis were involved. I believe the Israelis knew about 9/11 before it happened. And that's why we ended up with this inordinate number of Israeli intelligence agents in New York that day. And that's why we ended up with the so-called dancing Israelis, because they knew it was going to happen. They did nothing to stop it on purpose because they knew that we would attack Muslims. And we killed, 2 million Muslims over the next 20 years. And that was exactly what they wanted us to do.
Noble Gold. Real assets. Real value.